Steve Dickinson here, and this is Presenting Confidence. Talking about spatial anchoring, talking about the old way of doing it and the new way of doing it, and making sure that my timeline is reversed so it makes sense for anybody. So it's going from, the past is on the left, the future is on the right. The old bad way of doing things was on the left, the good way of doing things is on the right. The difficulty that you used to have in the past is on the left, your compelling future is going to be on the right. And you sort of pace people from where they used to be to where they are now, and then future pace along with them to this new compelling future. Now, a great way of working this out, if you can, is to just work out where a person looks when they're thinking about the past. And then you can point to that place. So I said, well, what sort of thing were you doing in the past? And they go, well, point there from then on. And this was done very well with Darren Brown. He was with, I think, some teenage girls in a club in New York, I think. Or maybe Hollywood, I don't know. And he did a neurolinguistic programming thing which uses submodalities. We've got the mode of sight, the mode of sound, and the mode of feelings. I was talking about our primary representation system, the way we represent the world. Do we do it more in pictures? Do we do it in words? Or do we do it as a feeling? So you can imagine it's a lot easier to connect a feeling to something that's nice and bright and shiny and vivid. So he said, let's think about something that's going to happen tomorrow. That's something we know is going to happen, like the sun coming up tomorrow morning. So if you think about tomorrow morning, what's the picture you're getting in your mind? Yeah, okay, yeah. He said, well, whereabouts is it located? He said, well, just here. He said, is there a border around it? She said, no, not really. No, it's a sort of panoramic. So, is it bright or dull? Is it far away or close? And he slowly got to work out that things that she thinks are going to happen, she can see right in front of her, brilliant, bright, focused colour. Said, okay, that's good. So what's something you can't imagine happening quite so easily? Something you're not sure is going to happen? And the, look at that connection there.
Unnoticed.
See, having a sip wasn't in my mind as I saw you pick up your glass, and I thought, oh yeah. So I deleted something that was apparently quite useful, hydration. So he said to this girl, so what's something that you're not so sure is going to happen? And she said, well, passing my exams. He said, okay, and I want you to imagine passing your exams. Whereabouts is that picture? And she said, I suppose down here somewhere. He said, is it colour or black and white? She said, well, kind of black and white. Is it sharp and, no, a bit indistinct, a bit fuzzy? He said, okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to take that picture, bring it up here, and make it as sharp and vivid and as vivid as you can imagine as you're passing your exams. Now, how do you feel about that now? And she said, yeah, actually, I feel more confident already. Now, that's a standard submodality NLP intervention. You take, you work out how they encode good and not so good, and get them to change it. What he then did was held up four cards. He said, "What colour's this?" It was just they weren't playing cards shaped, but a different, just one colour. What colour's this? I think it was yellow, or was it green? No, let's say green. And they said, "What colour's this? What card's this?" And she said, "Blue." He said, "Yeah, that's right." "What colour's this?" And whatever colour it was, he went, "Yeah, I suppose so. I'd say it was, red. It looks more maroon to me." "What colour's this?" And before he said, "Well, yeah," he said, "It's not blue, it's red." So I went, "Oh, sorry." He did it in such a way that he convinced her that what was it? Yellow was red, something like that. And when she got outside, she couldn't find her car. It was parked right there. And she said, "Well, it's the same model, but it's the wrong colour. Mine one, it's that colour over there." So, and that is the power of spatial anchoring, that you can actually convince someone that a colour is different, just because he went through the process of, this is how I know you're certain, and this is where you keep uncertainty. So he just went from certain down to uncertainty, and then convinced her that red was blue or something. And just shows the power of some of these techniques. And that's why I'm so fascinated with it. Admittedly, most of the stuff I do, the magic I do, is more a sleight of hand. That's more fun for me. But I have spoken to somebody about I might as well do it now. With playing cards, there are 4 suits. There's clubs, diamonds, hearts, and clubs.
Spades.
Spades. Yes, I did clubs twice, didn't I? Sorry. Clubs, diamonds, hearts, and spades. Now, I want you to imagine a cinema screen in your mind, and I want you to think of your favourite suit. I want you to make an image of that, just the colour, mind, an image of that as bright and as vivid as you possibly can on that screen. Now, at this point, what I'm doing is, if they look a bit confused, because how could you make black bright and vivid? If they look confused, I think, okay, it's a black card. I'm not. This isn't working so well now. But if they nod, I think, okay, it is a red card. Now, I've already emphasised clubs, diamonds, hearts, and spades. Of course, I messed it up by saying clubs twice. But I did emphasise very slightly the hearts. Now, I don't know whether you noticed, but I thought what's called an analogue marking. I just made that slightly different so it stood out. And then I said, now the number, high up in the corner of the screen. So as I said high, if they look slightly confused before I say high up in the corner of the screen, I think it's going to be a low number. But I've got a pretty good hit rate on the 7 or the 9. And when I get it right and say, oh, it was the nine of hearts you were thinking of, I get a massive, how could you possibly tell? Out of all the 4 suits and out of all the numbers, or all the cards, how could you know? And of course, when it doesn't work, which is, I'd say probably 2/3 of the time, I go straight on to another trick.
That's a good
Because no one knows. And I'd say, okay, well, that's good. So we've got a card in mind now. And then I'll go and do something else. I'll try and find it and go on to something else. But when it does work, it's brilliant. I can shut up right there and then just leave it. And they're just, oh, how? So yeah, that's the power of being able to create an image in somebody else's mind. Now, when I spoke just then about I analog mark something. Now, a trick this is a great way of describing it, because if I was going to say, which I very well may well do in other sessions, I would say, right, I'm giving you this training. You've had it at a really competitive price. I'm going to do all I can to serve you as best I can. But at some point during the day, I'd like to let you know how you can work with me at a deeper level and a more personalised level. Does that seem fair enough? Tag question. Yes. So instantly, I've got someone's permission to do that. So where was I going with this one? I just got slightly distracted by the next piece of paper I've got to pull up. So if I was to say that, I might say, well, by now, you've had a lot of information. By now, you might be able to make a decision. So by now, you might be thinking about what your future would be like. By now. How many times have I said by now? Did you notice I was saying buy as in purchase this, the ambiguity of purchase it? So you get used to nodding your head when I say buy now. Now that's a very, I think, crude example of how those analog markings will be used. But as I said, hold on tightly. When someone's up a ladder, you just, the bit that you want to say, just make it a little bit louder. Very often in these sort of circumstances, I'll say, okay, right, I'll tap on the glass and say, please feel free to take your seats now. That slight change in tonality is enough for people to go, oh, that sounded like a command. There's a softener on the front, please feel free to take your seats now. Subtle change in tonality. Right. The last bit that I'm going for before we do the final. Well, if anybody's interested, by the way, those I-axis and cues I was talking about, I mentioned, I alluded to it when I said if someone looks up in one direction, doesn't mean to say they're lying, but you can, because the eyes are connected. I'll let you see that later. Or it's on my website. Here we go. Right, put that one up there. Yes, it means that you can actually, because your eyes are connected directly to your brain, you can actually work out which part of their brain someone is using. So if their eyes do suddenly go up there, they're thinking about an image. They might be actually building an image of what something might look like, or they might be remembering something. And it'll be up to you to work that out. So you can say, well, do you remember what it was like? What the sky looked like yesterday in comparison to today? And they will flick their eye up one way because they're remembering it, or they might flick it up the other way. And then you know, well, that's where they remember images, and that's where if they're building a picture themselves, that's where they remember sound. That's where they, when they're making up a sound. This is where they, if they're feeling an emotion, or if they're having a little internal dialogue with themselves. So I remember talking to my daughter about something, and I said, what's the sound of, and I was specifically looking at her eyes. I said, what's the sound of rain on a corrugated iron roof? She looked down to the left. So I stopped, and it suddenly struck me. She's having a little inner dialogue. She was chatting to herself in her head. And the question was, what's corrugated iron? They didn't have bike sheds. She didn't know what it was. I was able to spot that instantly because I knew that she wasn't thinking about a sound. She was talking to herself. So being able to utilize those these I-axis cues, but I must emphasize, don't go overboard on it. It's much easier just to create a connection with someone and be interested in what they've got to say. And this is how you can, it doesn't matter if it's a room, or just a number of people, or just one-to-one. If you are truly interested in that other person, if you are truly interested in providing value, that is what's going to be the most important thing. I mean, okay, you can use the language tricks and maybe put somebody in be able to explain a little bit better to them if you understand which way their eyes are going and which words they're using. But I told somebody to think of a purple elephant, and he went off horizontally to the left. So I said, well, that's weird. You're thinking of a sound. I said, think of a picture. He said, no, sorry, I just got distracted. I was thinking about a Phil Jupiter's joke about elephants. And so I can instantly tell that he wasn't thinking about it. So it's amazingly powerful being able to just looking at somebody's eyes and see where their eyes just flick briefly. But let's assume that you've met someone, they've contacted you, they're now coming along to find out more about your product or service. Now I'm going to do this from a coaching point of view because this is the way I will talk to my clients. And I'll start off with objectives, or the session objectives. I'll be perfectly clear about it. First of all, I'll thank them for spending their time with me, and then create a detachment from outcome. I'll say something along the lines of, we're going to have a chat right now. I'm going to do my best to help you out so you can establish a way forwards. And if at some point that way forwards works out, seems that there's a good fit between the two of us and we can see a way forwards together, well, that's a conversation for later. Right now, all we want to do is find out more about you and your business. So that's what I mean by detachment from outcome. They're thinking, oh man, we're in a sales meeting. I knew I shouldn't have agreed to meet this person. They're about to try and charge me a whole lot of stuff for things that I'm not sure I even need. So if you create that detachment from outcome, if they can understand that it's just a conversation, because the more I find out about people, the more conversations like this I have, the better coach I become. The more I find out about the types of fabrics, the mix of fabrics people have got in their house, the more I'm able to be flexible for all my customers. The more I find out the specific difficulties of stopping people from actually doing any bookkeeping during the year, the easier I find it to help my existing clients to do things in such a way that they save time and they don't pay for as much of my time. So that's what I mean by detachment from outcome. The next bit I talk about is what inspired you to show up today. So actually, I don't know if you want to take notes on it. It'll be on the video. What inspired you to turn up today? Now, one person I spoke to, I left myself a lot of space. She took an hour to answer that question, a whole hour. And then I say, okay, well, if there's one thing you could accomplish, if there's one thing you need from an accountant, if there's one thing you need about having a cleaner house, what would be most important? Or what is most important to you about this subject? And they answer, and they say, well, if there's one thing that could be really important, that would be most important, what would it be? So you found out why they thought it was worth coming out. You found out what's important to them, and the one thing that is most important, and then start going into this. How much is it costing you? What is what's the cost of you doing it this way? Of you carrying on doing it like this? Then okay, well, what's standing in your way? And then last two. If we were to solve this problem, how do you think your life would be? So you've found out what's most important, found out what's getting in the way, found out the cost of it. Got dug in into the the implications, and then say, so what's getting in the way? And if we could, and eventually on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to get it fixed? Now that is the process I go through when I'm meeting someone one-to-one. I'm perfectly clear about it. So it's basically a case of detachment from outcome. So they are not feeling anxious that you're going to try and make them do something. Find out why they thought it was worth investing their time. Find out what's really important to them and what's most important. Work out the difficulties they're having, what's stopping them. And then finally, what would their life be if they were to fix it? And how committed are they to fixing it? And then you're going to have a conversation of, well, so what do you think? Do you think there's a way forward? You might think, okay, well, look, I'm not going to say anything now, but from what you've said, would it be okay if I were to come back to you with some kind of offer as to how I think we might be able to work better together? I know one guy, he will sign them up right there and then for a £100,000 coaching program. Or another guy, he will never do that, but he will always have a second meeting. I mean, this whole thing might happen on the phone. I prefer to do it face to face. So that's a step-by-step process that I've found useful. But it's that detachment from out, the session objectives, what I want them to do. And if I want them to do something, what's going to get in their way? Are they going to be less are they going to communicate with me less because, or if they think I'm trying to sell them something? If I tell them that the sales conversation is for later, and I'm going to benefit from this conversation because it's going to help me be a better coach or a better cleaner or a better accountant, well then they think, oh, okay, well maybe I can help. And with that attitude of means that there'll be a better communication, you'll be able to provide more value, you'll be able to understand the implications of their problem, and you're more likely to get them to sign up because they by now trust you. By now, sorry, that was an accident. So before we finish, sit down for this. Can you imagine a person, alive or dead, famous or not famous, friend, acquaintance, anybody that you would look up to? Like somebody say, oh, Richard Branson. There's somebody that you think is really good at talking about, not necessarily within your industry, but somebody who is you just admire as a presenter, admire as having a degree of confidence that you would like to aspire to have. Can you got someone in mind?
Sort of.
Sort of. So if you anybody else? You would always change your mind.
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay. Now, I want you to imagine that person in a presentation situation, whether it's calling at somebody's door, talking at a networking event, meeting somebody in a coffee shop. I would like you to imagine, and you might want to close your eyes during this, but imagine as if it's a film you're watching of them doing exactly what it is that you want to do better. So I want you to from beginning to end, nice, bright, vivid colours. I want you to imagine the way they hold themselves, the way they gesticulate while they're talking, the sound of their voice, the way they hold their shoulders. And just imagine that. You're watching a film of them doing exactly what it is that you are here to learn how to do better. And just go through that as a film and watch it a couple of times from beginning to end. Just run through it again, looking at the way they hold themselves, the way they breathe, the way they look at somebody else, until you can really see the mannerisms and the characteristics that they have when they're doing this particular thing. Okay, so it's interesting to hear the children playing out there, isn't it? I hope that's not coming out on the audio. Now, what I'd like you to do is go back into that same scenario, but instead of seeing them in the film, I would like you to be in the film. So I'd like you to see yourself from the outside with the same mannerisms, with the holding yourself the same, just almost like you're acting what they were like, and see that through. Make it this film as bright and as vivid as you can, and keep running through it until you can see exactly the way you will behave in this circumstance. Just run through it again. Look at the way you're breathing. Look at the mannerisms. Look at the way you're holding yourself. Nice and bright and vivid. Now what I want you to do is float into that body of you. So now it's you experiencing that same thing. You can see what you would see. You can hear what you would hear. And you will feel what you'll feel as you are doing incredibly well at the particular thing that you're aiming for. Now, I should have taken a scale of 1 to 10 as how confident you are right at the beginning of the day, really. I forgot to I'll do that in future. But on a subjective scale of enthusiasm, given what you've just been thinking about, do you feel more confident or less confident? More confident about being able to do these things. Visualization is incredibly powerful. Yeah.
Yes.
More
That
confident.
that is the neuro-linguistic programming new behavior generator. So you look at the behavior you want, or you decide the behavior you want, work out who would do it best, work out how they do it, work out what you'd look like doing it, and then go in and feel yourself doing it. Now, I know there's a famous experiment where they got some people to visualize taking basketball shots just and going straight in. So they got some people to practice, some people not to practice, and some people just visualize it. These were all basketball players to begin with, though. And there was no difference. Was there no difference? I think the visualizers were slightly better because when they were visualizing doing it, they never missed. Whereas the guys that were practicing sometimes missed. Now, what popped into my mind just then was the power of language again. The power of the word because. People love to have reasons. What they do is this was back in the days when you had to queue for a photocopier. So they got a whole lot of I think there were some actors at the front, and then somebody joined at the back, and somebody else came in and said, do you mind if I go first? Or do you mind if I go ahead of you? And they go, no, no, you can't. Then they said, do you mind if I go ahead of you because I'm late for a meeting? They go, oh yeah, go on then. But what was amazing was when they said, do you mind if I go ahead of you because I've got some copying to do? I said, yeah, okay. There was a reason. And another one is that which is amazing, just because. So strange. And there are a number of things I've got on language patterns. In fact, there's a whole raft of them that you can use, and examples in my book, which I'm not trying to flog because I'm rewriting it. Or I've rewritten it. I just haven't had the final proof done. Another one was a simple, briefest touch on the forearm. This was in America, where they put the quarter in the telephone and it would pop out the bottom. Next person up, so they just put a quarter in there. Next person up went, took the quarter, and went, hey, I'm the deal. And then someone comes along and says, I left a quarter in there. Did you see it? And they go, no, sorry. but you just come along and say, oh, I just left a quarter in the machine. Did you see it? Just that briefest, not undefined, but barely noticeable touch on the forearm. And that created a connection. Some people go, get off me, you weird freak. What are you touching me for? But most people, or many more people, actually gave them the quarter back, just from that brief touch. Now that's something that wasn't natural to me, but I practiced until it feels perfectly natural. I will touch someone on the forearm, especially if there's a particular point when we both agree. And that, amazingly, can make, well, not amazingly, it's, even though or a quick touch on the shoulder, that's not sometimes not so intimate as touching because a lot of times the forearms are bare. But so a touch on the shoulder can really help you create a connection. And the connection is the thing that I'm talking about. You remember I was talking about looking back at the beauty of the cinema. You look up and see the light shining through. It could be the most hideous horror film you've ever seen on the screen, but when you look back, it's all the pretty colours. When you look at somebody else's behaviour, and you think, oh, I don't like them, not actually the person that you don't like, it's their behaviour. I don't think to myself, what must a person be thinking in order to behave like that? But then I can maybe see past it to the beauty of the light first streaming out. That everybody, all of us, have just got a life energy, and we're doing the best we can by focusing it through the thoughts that we're having in the moment, and then behaving consciously based on that thinking. So if you can see past the thought and see that every person is exactly the same as you, with their minds, their thoughts, and their consciousness, that every single person comes from the same life force as everybody else. I mean, what I tell the kids is that we're made of hydrocarbons. Originally, there was just hydrogen. Hydrogen got collected into lumps until it got heavy, so heavy it started collapsing on itself. And carbon was created in the heart of a star. Gold was created during a supernova, during an explosion. So all of us are made of stardust. We're not individuals living in the universe. We are part of the universe. We're all part of the universe. We're all part of the same universe. We are all alive together. And I've seen some amazing connections where people can almost read each other's minds because they feel so connected. And if you can create that connection, and you can do that sometimes just by listening to somebody, but really, truly listening. Because a lot of people will be listening for a space for them to talk. But if you really, truly listen to people, that you can create a connection that means that when you speak, if it's structured, clear, and concise, when you speak, they will listen. And as I said right at the beginning, life is a series of presentations. Every conversation, you are presenting yourself in a particular way. I want you to be able to present confidently. Not just looking confident, which it may be the first couple of times you might, oh, what am I supposed to do here? If you've rehearsed it enough, you'll be, you feel a little bit nervous. I mean, if there's more people in the room, I probably would have felt a little more nervous. Would have gone much, much quicker than it ever used to before. I'd be halfway through my presentation before I finally began to not. I remember once, I got such a dry mouth, I poured some water while I was talking, then went over the podium and put it down. I came back, I couldn't find my water, I poured some more. So it was the one thing they remember, oh, he's a guy that can't find his glass. So I said I would talk about psychology, the way the mind works, the way we experience things, and a structure for different types of presentation. In particular, what are your objectives? What do you want to do? And at the beginning, I said that my objective was for you to be able to go away here with the skills you need and the information you need and the understanding you need to be able to have the insights when you need them for you to be better and better at presenting and more comfortable within your own skin while standing in front of other people. So do you think I've reached the objectives today? Well, that's good to hear. 100% agreement, which I'm pleased with. So I should really finish on a story, shouldn't I? Okay, I couldn't think of one to begin with. There was a master looked down at his disciple and said, if you were dreaming, and in this dream you went on a long journey, and the longer the journey went on, it seemed to get more and more difficult. And it turned out that if you turned down the left-hand path, something bad would happen to you. And if you turned down the right-hand path, something bad would happen to a loved one. What would you do? You said, I'll wake up. If we just wake up to the fact that we live in a sorry, I had to make that up. I vaguely remember the story, but it was nothing like that. We live in a thought-created reality. And if we ever begin to get so churned up that we're thinking, oh, it's all going wrong, just wake up to the fact that it's only your thinking. There's a great example of a company that I heard about, again from Dr. Aaron Turner. They looked like they were going to have to completely retool their factory, shut it down for 9 months and refurbish the whole thing. They've been working on this problem, the project management team, for months, and they were finally going to have to go to the board and say there's no way around it. And so the project manager said, okay, well, look, guys, we've tried everything. Just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to tell them tomorrow. You didn't come in early or anything. I'll be here first thing, and I'm going to tell the board the bad news. And when he got in the following day, one of his colleagues was already there. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I handle it on my own. He said, yeah, well, to be quite honest, when I got home, it's the first time I've been able to sleep for ages, because it was a real relief not to be thinking about this anymore. And in the middle of the night, I woke up with an idea. And when I got here, Ted had the same idea as well, so that's why we're both here. You know, it turned out that they only needed to close the factory for 2 days. But they'd got so worked up into thinking and overthinking it, they just couldn't see the wood for the trees. And in fact, they developed a saying in that company. If anybody was having a difficult time, they'd say, "You given up yet?" And they go, "Oh yeah, maybe I should take a step back." It's like when people talk about positive thinking. You take if you take a jar of murky water, and how would you clear it? Well, someone says shake it up. Well, that's not going to work. Pour more mud in? No, that's not going to work. Boil it? No, that's not going to work. So, pardon?
Just let it sit.
Let it settle. And and you'll find out there's only about that much in there. It's like when you go, I don't know if you ever had paint mixed up. They put a little drop of this, little drop of that, little drop of everything else, give it a good shake, and now you've got a tin of paint that's completely different colour. Most of it was white. Just these few little bits. So you get one or two contaminated thoughts, and it can change the colour of everything. That's why I talk about positive thinking. Oh, you've got to think positively. Well, that's like putting more mud into the jar and hoping that's going to work. If you recognise the nature of thought and realise that we live in that thought-created reality, that's when you're going to start to have insights into your own, other people's behaviour. You're going to develop a massive amount of resilience because you know there's nothing really out there that's going to hurt other than your own thinking. So I think that's about it. I thank you very much for attending and helping me out here. I've really enjoyed the day. Thank you for your feedback at lunchtime as well. So I think, and thank you, Shane. So I think we'll finish right there. Thank you for your attention.